Hello, today I will be covering distribution strategy. Let's jump in. So, with distribution strategy, we have to think back to some of the concepts that we discussed early on in the semester, which goes back to foundational marketing concepts back in era one of marketing. That is the idea of channels of distribution and marketing intermediaries. Now, these were some of the most common things talked about in the early marketing part of our discipline because channels of distribution and marketing intermediaries was marketing in that first era because they were concerned about these middlemen and the way that products got from the producer to the consumer and those intermediaries in between. So what is a channel of distribution? Well, it is the combination of the institutions through which a seller markets their products to organizational buyers or ultimate consumers. So we have different channels of distribution, which may occur from the producer to the wholesaler to the reseller to the retailer, and then finally to the end consumer. These we're going to go through a lot more, but that's just to give you a good idea of where channels of distribution will kind of lead us. So why are marketing intermediaries used by producers? Why would, say for instance, like Kellogg, why would they want to use an intermediary? Well, Kellogg, cereal company, they may want to use an intermediary because the intermediary performs the functions, performs several functions more cheaply and efficiently than the producer could. So what does it mean by being efficient? Well, that's delivering the product when and where it's wanted at a minimum cost. So obviously there's costs associated with distributing your product from production to the end consumer. And so those costs, if you can use an intermediary, those costs may be minimized compared to doing all of the distribution yourself as the company. So the primary role of an intermediary is to bring supply and demand together efficiently and effectively. So with that, supply and demand is a really important concept where obviously there's producers on one hand where they have the supply, and then there are consumers that want particular goods. So the job of the intermediary is to balance how much product they have on hand and based off of how much demand there is for a particular product, and to make sure that those come together to where products don't go bad sitting on the shelf. They're put out there and consumers are getting what they need, so we don't have stockouts. So many of you who are a supply chain major, you're probably familiar with distribution because distribution is pretty key in the supply chain program, understanding distribution. So we're going to give a broad overview of how distribution plays a role in marketing strategy and different strategies a firm may employ with their distribution process itself. So there are different marketing intermediaries. These could be called like middlemen, as I've mentioned, agents. We also have the term wholesaler, which I've used before. Retailer, they're a type of intermediary. You also have brokers, manufacturers, agents, things that we call like distributors. Previously, we might have heard terms like jobber or facilitating agent. Now, the functions that are performed in channels of distribution, we're going to go into each of those. One is they perform transactional functions, meaning that a intermediary will buy a product, they will also sell the product, and they take on certain risks, right? With buying and selling, they take on the risk that potentially the products that they buy will not sell. And so that can cause a lot of problems for the intermediary if the product doesn't sell, right? They have to eat the cost. They also perform logistical functions, and this comes into play in the supply chain part where they have to assort the products, store the products, sort them, and transport those products. And finally, they provide facilitating functions, and that is they have to oftentimes perform certain financing. They at times can perform grading of particular products, and then other times they may provide different types of information and research. So, for example, the retailer may be able to provide certain information to the producer or the manufacturer to help them better understand. Maybe they have information on customer loyalty information by having like that loyalty card. Well, they may be able to pull, okay, who the certain demographics are of their particular product, who they may need to focus on as far as like their target market or reevaluate their target market. A lot of information can be gleaned from loyalty cards and information that a end retailer might collect. So this is just the way of we might see channels of distribution, particularly for consumer goods. Sometimes you might have direct from manufacturer to consumers. This happens quite often now due to online retailing, where a manufacturer or whoever is going to make that good, they will sell that good directly to consumers through their website. However, oftentimes what we're probably most familiar with is a manufacturer will send their products to a retailer who then sells it to the end consumer. Now, there's other variations of this where you can have several intermediaries, and that's shown here at the bottom, where you may have a manufacturer who they have sales agents that then talk to the wholesalers, and those wholesalers then sell the product to the retailers who then sell the final product to consumers. So it can be a lot of intermediaries in that chain or that whole channel of distribution. And so with this, obviously, whenever there's more intermediaries, the cost of that good for the end consumer increases because everybody has to make money as it progresses through that channel, right? The manufacturer has to make money. The agent, whoever they sell it to, the wholesaler, they have to make money. The wholesalers make money, and then the retailer, they would also have to make a certain markup percentage. So with that, consumers, as more intermediaries enter the channel, the greater the cost will be for that product. Now, we can also look at the channel of distribution for organizational goods. You can see that the widest channel of distribution is not as wide as for the consumer side. So with that, we could have manufacturers who make their goods and sell it to organizational users. We also have distributors or agents who could directly sell from the manufacturer to the user. And then you may also have where there's agent, distributor, and then the organizational user. So these channels are kind of important where you can see different ways that a company or a firm may decide that they want to set up their distribution channel. Those are some of the ways that they could do that. Now, there are some different characteristics we might consider as more general considerations. One is customer characteristics, product characteristics, intermediary characteristics, competitor, and company characteristics. So all of these are more general considerations that whenever we're selecting our channel of distribution, we have to be aware of. So who are our customers? What type of product we are selling? What type of intermediaries are available to get our products to the end consumer? What are our competitors doing? Does this really fit in with our company? And then what things are happening in the environment that may affect what type of channel of distribution that we use? Finally, you can consider some specific things, and this might be the type of distribution coverage that you need. Does it need to be nationwide? Are you looking to get this out to several retailers or just one retailer in particular? So a lot of those things are really important and we're going to be talking about each of those aspects of the distribution coverage in the next slide. You may also want to have a degree of control. You may want to have more control, or you may be okay with less control. And then we also need to consider the cost of the total distribution and the flexibility of our channel. Is it going to be very rigid, or can we have a little bit of flexibility there? So first, we'll talk about the distribution coverage required. And so we could have where it's more of intensive distribution, where you're trying to get out to as many retailers and obviously to as many customers as possible. So with that, you may use several wholesalers that then distribute your product to several retailers, and that gets your product out to as many customers as possible. You may want to have selective distribution where you go to a few wholesalers and you're more selective in the retailers that you want your product to be sold at. And obviously, these would differ based off of the size of your company, the reputability of your company. And so like a major company like Coca-Cola, they're following more of like the intensive distribution, right? We can see Coca-Cola is their products are pretty well available anywhere you go, like at gas stations, at the university, at grocery stores. Coca-Cola is like everywhere, right? So they have a very intensive distribution as far as their distribution coverage. Whereas maybe a smaller Coke company, soda company, they may be focused more on the selective, or they could even be focused on like an exclusive distribution. So with that, like this happens a lot with like HEB. They usually get a lot of like with their wine and beer segment, they have exclusive distribution with many of their wineries that they go and source the wine from or beer from. And so at HEB, you can find many brands that are selectively and only sold at HEB stores. And this kind of creates this, once consumers find that out, and if it's a really good product that they just really love, it may create a specific demand that brings a lot of customers to that particular retail location. So there are these types of distribution coverage, and with that, we have to consider the degree of control. So degree of control, it has to do with the way that the processes can affect behaviors of another person, group, or organization. So the degree of control is directly proportional to the directness of channel. So I had shown you those different types of channels of distribution. We could have intensive, selective, and exclusive. Well, the more indirect the channel, the more the manufacturer surrenders more control over the marketing of the firm's products. And with that, the manufacturer kind of leaves the marketing oftentimes to the retailer, especially for like sales promotion. We can think of this like in the cereal aspect, that a lot of these companies like Kellogg's, obviously they advertise on TV, but the sales promotions they leave to the retailer because they can't control every retailer, because they're in almost every store that you can think of, right? Every grocery store has a cereal aisle, and pretty much their products are available to the most wide audience as possible. We also have to consider the cost of getting our products out there and the flexibility. So with this, we can view a channel of distribution as a system perspective. And obviously there's these interdependent subsystems involved in that. With that, you may have a manager that they're trying to optimize the total performance, and we have some major costs that we might want to minimize, such as transportation, the order processing, and the cost of any lost business due to like stockouts or anything like that. So we also may have some inventory carrying costs, and that occurs through any storage space charges, taxes, insurance, deterioration of the product. We also have to consider the packaging and handling. And with that, we also should consider our channel flexibility, and that's the ability for that manufacturer to adapt to any particular changing conditions that are happening in the environment, right? A lot of times, especially whenever, like, let's say COVID-19, whenever it hit, a lot of these channels had to be flexible to be able to adjust to the increased demand for like toiletry products that weren't available in many places due to the low supply. Relationship marketing is pretty key here, and that's because long-term relationships between the intermediaries is really important. That's because you can get higher quality products, you can also have lower cost, and we also have to consider that there's vertical marketing systems at play, where the channels in which members are more dependent on one another, they develop more long-term relationships to improve that efficiency and effectiveness. So we may have more of a corporate, holistic type of vertical marketing system where Apple kind of is really involved in all aspects of the distribution, right? Apple can get your product to you directly, and so we might have that corporate side of vertical marketing system, or we could have more of a contractual side, and then we could have also the administered, which is the greater the size of the manufacturer, the more dominance that manufacturer has on the channels of distribution. So we're about to be finished up, but we have a few more things that we might consider. Wholesaling is one. Wholesalers, they are any merchants that are engaged in buying, taking title to, storing, and handling those goods and reselling those goods to retailers or any particular business that may need it. They're also called distributors in some cases, and they create value by performing those functions more efficiently and effectively than the producer could. So this just kind of ties back to what we talked about at the beginning of the lecture. And the goal of the wholesaler is they try to attract more producers to use their services, because the more products they have that the wholesaler can offer, they can attract even more like in businesses or even more customers that might want to purchase from the wholesaler. But oftentimes we can think about this like restaurants, they purchase from wholesalers quite often. That's primarily who they get their products from. And so the more products that they have, a wholesaler, there's not a ton of wholesalers out on the like for the restaurant market, but the more products they have, they can be more competitive than the other wholesalers that are out there on the market. They also, though, need to attract retailers and organizational customers to purchase from them. So it goes hand in hand where they need more products, but they also need more people to purchase their products. And so with that, there's agents that will try to get manufacturers to wholesale directly with the one particular wholesaler, and then there's other agents that go to retailers and end customers to get them to purchase from that wholesaler. So they have two different types of agents that kind of work hand in hand in that regard. We also have store retailing, which is what we should be very familiar with. They vary in different ways, obviously, by the type of merchandise they carry, the breadth of product assortment, and then the depth of product assortment. So we can think of breadth as being like Walmart. They offer a very wide variety of products. But as far as depth, we may think of like Best Buy, because they're focused more on electronics. And then they also vary by the amount of service they provide, and that is the in-service that they may provide, similar to where you may need extras. So like whenever you buy your car, if they have complimentary services, like you can get your oil changed, if they offer car wash window tinting, all of those little extra services that you may need that go with your product. So we may think of mass merchandisers where we have the broad assortments like Kroger, and they compete based off of the amount of selection. So they have a wide selection of products at what we might say is like a high quality. But Walmart, they're competing based on low price. So they have a broad product assortment, but the products that they have are focused on more of the lower priced items. We may also have specialty stores, and that's really the depth, deep assortments. And I had mentioned like Best Buy because their focus is specifically on electronics. So they have a very deep assortment of all things electronics at Best Buy. And then we might also have the convenience store, which we're probably all familiar with, which is providing location convenience, and we might think of like 7-Eleven as an example. So to conclude our presentation, we'll talk about some methods of non-store retailing. We could have, back in the day, we had catalogs and direct mail, which were very common. A lot of retailers still use catalogs and direct mail. Sam's Club is it's very common that they send out direct mail pieces and sometimes like mini catalogs that you can look through of their, like they do it for like the July 4th sale, or they do it for like Christmas sale. JCPenney's used to do this, and several other retailers used to do this more often. We also have vending machines as non-store retailing. While vending machines primarily used to be, right, food is what we typically know of it, or drinks. We could have vending machines also now for like electronics that you may see in like airports. And it's a great way for a retailer to place their products in that location without having to have anybody really man those vending machines, just come back and restock every now and then. We also have television home shopping, which is like the QVC network, if you've ever watched that on television, or any type of infomercial really is the television home shopping. We also have direct sales and telemarketing that happen, and online retailing, mobile retailing, and then multi-channel marketing. So online retailing we're very familiar with. Mobile retailing has started to become more popular, where you can order through an app, or you can order even by text message. In some cases, like Domino's, they allow you to order your food, like reorder via text. They've also come out with recently where you can order your pizza through a tweet. So there's companies who are like kind of breaking the boundaries on this mobile type retailing that really hasn't been done in the past. And then, like I mentioned, multi-channel marketing. This is where a company is offering their products and services in a variety of channels, whether it be like in stores and catalogs, online, through direct sales, on television. I think of this like MyPillow. They offer through their infomercials quite a bit. They sell online. They also were heavily brought into like the Walmarts. And so they are a good example of multi-channel marketing. Now, we've gone through everything with distribution strategy, a lot of the specifics. If you have any questions about distribution strategy, please feel free to email me at kt.manus@ttu.edu. Thanks.